Wagwan, my peoples. I'm getting vulnerable with you guys today because I know you've been watching for a while. You probably know who I am, and I've probably told you the story of where I come from and how I got here, but I haven't quite told you the full story. So stay tuned because here it is. What is going on, YouTube? If you are new to the channel, welcome. And if you are returning, welcome back to the Living in Tampa Bay channel. I am your host, Shandon Kiah, and your trusted real estate advisor for the Tampa Bay area. We have finally made it to the second half of 2026. And for this video, I wanted to do something a little bit different today and just reintroduce myself as a trusted local here in the Tampa Bay area, a resident of St. Petersburg, and someone you can get to know and trust. And if you've been watching my content for a while, you probably know a little bit about me from what I share, but I haven't told you guys the full story of where I come from, what happened to me, and how I ended up right here in St. Petersburg, Florida. Before I jump into the story, I want to remind you guys that I am a licensed agent in the state of Florida. So if you have plans or goals on moving to Florida, especially the Tampa Bay area, I would be honored to answer any questions you may have and help you make your transition here as smooth as possible. So I'm going to drop my contact information on screen so you guys can get in touch. And please don't hesitate to give me a call, send me a text, shoot me an email, as I'm always here to be a resource for you. And if you enjoyed this video and want to see more content like it, please be sure to go down, like, comment, and hit that subscribe button because it genuinely helps me continue to create more content like this for you guys. All right, let's get on with the story. So my name is Shandon Kiah. I was born and raised in a small town called Mansfield, Ohio. It is what used to be a bustling and industrial city way back in the 1800s and early 1900s. But the city I grew up in was nothing like that. If you don't know, Ohio is drug-ridden. There's not a whole lot to do, and Mansfield is right in between Cleveland, Columbus, and Toledo. And then just a couple hours from Toledo is Detroit. So it's kind of like the center point for like a lot of gang activity, a lot of drug activity. Not really the best place to grow up. Growing up, I always told people who asked that my family was the definition of middle class. I had two parents in my life for the large part of my childhood. Both parents were working, making decent income, and I just had one brother that I was raised with. He is 6 years older than I am. His name is Trey, and I think we lived a pretty average lifestyle. We weren't poverty, but we weren't wealthy either. We were right there in the middle where, most American families either aim to be or tend to be. Growing up, I was one of those kids who was just naturally gifted at everything. My parents were always on top of my academics. I had to be a straight A student or it meant bad things at home. So thankfully, I never had to deal with, the repercussions of getting bad grades. I always tended to my studies and made sure I got my work done to achieve those high marks in class. But because I was naturally gifted and everything kind of came easy to me, I was incredibly arrogant. And I would straight up tell people to their face, I'm better than you. I was a bully pretty much from kindergarten all the way up until high school. And looking back, it's not something I'm proud of, but it is the truth. I did thankfully, however, have grandparents who were a big part of my upbringing during my childhood, and they taught me manners, respect to your elders, all the things that a child should be learning as they grow up. They made sure we were well-intentioned, that we were well-informed, that we engaged in conversation in public with adults, both me and my brother. And those things kind of came full circle and applied to real life. And, looking back, that's one of the things I'm most grateful for, because nowadays you see a lot of parents give their kid the iPad and headphones and, they never really engage with the world around them. So I'm very thankful to have had that upbringing, and those skills certainly translated into my life today. So fast forward into high school, I again was a exemplary scholar or student. I achieved high marks all through high school, and For that reason, I was pursuing academic scholarships, amongst others, to some of the most prestigious universities in the United States, including NYU, New York University, University of Chicago, High Point University, the King's College in New York City as well. And I had high expectations for myself. I wanted to get as far away from Mansfield as possible and really show people that, you know, some light-skinned kid from a small town in Ohio can make it out into a big city and really thrive. And then I was thrown into the goalkeeper box for my high school soccer team, and I was very, very good at it. I ended up leading the state in saves for 3 years in a row, my sophomore, junior, and senior year. And I started getting eyes from multiple recruiters from different universities from all over the country, even some international universities as well. It was around this time that I started receiving not only academic scholarships, but sports scholarships as well. And it kind of completely changed my focus and what my goals were going to be, because I got presented this brand new opportunity that I had never seen coming. As someone who was a scholar pretty much my whole life, it was a big surprise to me to start getting offers to come play football or soccer at a university level. So when it came time for me to decide what school to choose, I pretty much boiled it down to 3 options. I could go play football at the King's College in New York City. I could go to High Point University and solely focus on academics, or I could fly out with this recruiter to the University of Chester in Chester, England, and play soccer and pursue my studies at the same time, with the hopes of achieving a professional contract starting at the semi-pro level. So this decision was obviously heavy. No school I wanted to go to was in the state of Ohio. Like I said, I wanted to be as far away as possible. But I remember watching Naruto Shippuden at that time, and he was training with Jiraiya, and he was on top of a mountain meditating, trying to find his inner self and figure out the path that was going to be most successful for him. And this inspired me, and I will never forget this. At the time, my mom and I were living with my uncle, and I got out on the rooftop. I couldn't sleep all night. And probably from like 3 or 4 in the morning until like 7 or 8 in the morning, I just sat up there and I meditated and sat on the decision I was going to make for which university I was going to choose. And at our very last home soccer game, senior night, we announced which universities we plan on going to, and I had made my decision. I was going to go play overseas at the University of Chester and study business, entrepreneurship, and global finance. Everyone was so stoked for me. They couldn't believe that I had chosen to fly out of the country and go to university in a different continent. And I think my mom was the most flustered. Obviously, as her son, that's a big decision to deal with and send your son away for school. But everyone, for the most part, was, you know, very excited for the journey ahead of me, and I honestly had no idea what I was getting myself into. Now, this is where it gets interesting. So I got overseas, I land in England, and the culture shock is very, very real. They don't listen to any of the same music, they don't really watch the same television. The pop culture is a whole different world, and I felt so out of my comfort zone and not at home at all. The good part is I was a stellar goalkeeper, and I was able to fit in with the football team, or the football club rather, and for a while that was kind of like my in with everybody. It was an icebreaker, it was a conversation starter, and an easy way for me to get integrated with this new culture. Okay, so fast forward a little bit. I have just finished my first year in uni. I have assimilated, if you would, to the culture. I've made a ton of friends. I've found my little group that I can fit in, and I actually decided after a couple weeks that I wasn't going to play football anymore, and I was solely going to focus on my studies and my career coming out of university. This didn't catch too many people by surprise, other than maybe my coaches and my teammates, because I was such a great goalkeeper. They were surprised that I was taking a step away from the pitch. But for me, I never really wanted to be a professional athlete. I was always a scholar, and for me, my books and my career were more important. So that's why I ended up making that decision. So now I'm in the second year of university, and the best part about studying overseas is I could actually graduate in 3 years. That was one of the huge incentives for me going over there, opposed to 4 here in the United States. So I'm in my second year, studies are going well, friendships are going well, and I met this one person. He was older, he was not a student, he ended up being a very good friend and mentor of mine. Little did I know, I only know this in hindsight, but this person had a reputation that I was unaware of, and in a nutshell, we were involved in some activities that some may or may not approve of, and I'm still very young at this time. I think I'm doing what's best for me, and at the time, money was very attractive as a broke college student who is trying to, save up funds for a future career and life in investing. So right as things finally get moving and booming, I unfortunately get arrested in a different country. I am living in England. I am a citizen of the United States. I don't know their legal system. And one day, as I'm walking home from class, I get stopped in the alley and get placed under arrest, and unfortunately got taken into custody where I was interrogated. They asked me about what activities I was involved in, who I was involved in it with, and we eventually were released under investigation where I wasn't in jail, but I couldn't necessarily move around the way I was before. And this is my first time sharing this with the public. I know I've told you I went to university before overseas in England, but this is the part of the story I've left out. And now I feel like it's time that I just reveal it, as I'm in the part of my career where your story is your testimony and I can't hide it anymore. So upon my release, the police, or the Cheshire Constabulary is the formal term, seized my passport. So I am currently locked into the country. I cannot leave even if I wanted to. So I spoke to an attorney. He said, according to my documents, that I was not legally unallowed to leave. I only had to pursue an emergency passport from the US Embassy, which is exactly what I did. So I made an appointment that following week in London. And mind you, Chester is like a 4-hour train ride from London. So like I'm on the north side of the country, London's in the south. It was a lot of moving around for me to get down there and, find a way home. So I get to the embassy, and thank God they ended up issuing me an emergency passport, and I took the next flight home out of London. It was very expensive, it was very scary, but this experience humbled me. It opened my eyes to a much bigger world and purpose, and it was God telling me that you are very small in this world and you control nothing. So boom, I finally make it home back to the United States in December of 2019, right before Christmas. And I am still so in shock. I'm kind of in a very dark place. I'm lost because my whole plans of pursuing a global career in business are all of a sudden shut down, and I have to restart with absolutely no idea where I'm going to go. So, as the scholar in me would guide, I start reading. I'm digging into business books, mentorships, different niches that I can get myself involved in and try and dig myself out of this hole that I've put myself in. So one of those books happened to be Rich Dad Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki. And in that book, if you've never read it before, he talks a lot about how Rich Dad was a real estate investor and how that investment can really push you to the next level of wealth and the tax benefits and the other benefits that real estate provides that other asset classes can't. So I started asking my mom, what's her experience been like investing in real estate? She was a first-time home buyer at one point and ended up going through foreclosure, and it was actually a whole mess. But I wanted her opinion as a woman with experience. And she said, you know what? Why don't you get your real estate license and start selling real estate? And I said, you know what? That's actually not a bad idea. And all while this was happening, she had actually just received a job offer in Tampa, Florida. Her company was going to relocate her, and she had just taken a trip here and absolutely loved it, and there was no reason she could say no. So I made the pivot and I enrolled in the Tampa School of Real Estate, where I began my first real estate course. And within just a couple months, I finished the course, passed with 100%, and it was time for me to take my exam. But boom, COVID hits, they shut down all the testing centers, and I can no longer test, at least for the time being. So fast forward a few months, and about 4 or 5 months later in August, they opened just a few testing centers back up, and I was driving an hour to go test. And believe it or not, I had to take the test 7 times before I passed. And I think it was just because that gap in between the course and the test left me with so much blank in my brain, and the information wasn't fresh on my mind. But nonetheless, I ended up passing, and September 1st of 2020, at just 20 years old, I took my first step into Keller Williams Tampa Central, where I began my real estate career as a sales associate. And it was there that I learned the ropes, where I was cold calling hundreds of for sale by owners a day, and learning the business and learning how to cold call, learning how to handle objections, and all the things I needed to be doing to further my real estate career. And fast forward to today, in between now and then, I've learned some very, very valuable and expensive lessons, both in real estate and in life. And all I can do is thank God and appreciate everything that He has put in front of me, the trials and tribulations I've had to go through to be here. And here we are today. I am sat in Fort DeSoto Beach, one of St. Petersburg's best kept secrets. And I'm enjoying the day. I'm filming content, and I'm speaking to you guys, being completely vulnerable about my full true story. So with that, I will just say, no matter what your story is your testimony. I know for me, it was several years before I could reveal this to the public. As a young agent, people don't want to hear you got involved in legal troubles and had to fly home on an emergency passport from a different country. It just gives people red flags that you may be someone that you really aren't. And I don't think that defines me, but it's time for me to bring this to the surface and let people judge me for who I truly am. So if you're someone who's watching this who has been through hardship and trials, don't let that define you. You can always be more, do more. If I could give you one piece of advice, it would be submit your will to God, whatever God that is. There's one true creator, and I think on a path of good deeds and righteousness, He will guide you to success and the bounties of this world. So that is the story. I hope you guys enjoyed. If you want to see more content like this, please be sure to go down, like, comment, and hit that subscribe button, because it genuinely helps me continue to create more content like this for you guys, and let me know what kind of content you want to see. And remember, regardless of the past, I am always going to be your trusted real estate advisor for the Tampa Bay area. So if you have real estate goals, questions, or dreams of moving here, especially the Tampa Bay area, I would be honored to answer those questions, help you make your transition here as smooth as possible. And if you're a first-time homeowner, make it a very, very easy process for you. So I'm going to drop my contact information on screen one more time so you guys can get in touch. And I'm always available by text, call, or email, so don't hesitate to reach out. Thanks for tuning in today. I'll be seeing you guys on the next video. Peace.